conversation with North Carolina Republican U.S. Senate candidate Michael Whatley, Georgia drivers keeping more of their money in their pockets, data center controversies from across the country, Wisconsin businesses sharing their frustrations, and the cost of fast food. This is the Center Square Daily for Wednesday, June 10th, 2026. I'm your host, Greg Bishop. What's at stake for taxpayers in the November midterms? We're still months away, but voters getting a taste with primaries last night. Maine, Nevada, North Dakota, and South Carolina. In Maine, Graham Plattner, a Maine oyster farmer, is projected to move forward in a general election for November for U.S. Senate against incumbent Republican U.S. Senator Susan Collins. Elsewhere in Maine elections, the crowded gubernatorial primary is going to be decided by ranked choice voting after none of the candidates picked up a majority of the vote in last night's election. In the Democratic primary, Nirav Shah, a physician and former U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention official, was headed with a 26.7% of the votes in Tuesday evening's projections. The AP saying that the race would be going to a runoff. Democratic Governor Janet Mills, she has been term limited. On the Republican ticket, Bobby Charles, an attorney and former Navy intelligence officer, was leading six other GOP candidates in the gubernatorial election Tuesday with 38.5% of the vote, according to preliminary results. The rules in Maine require voters to list candidates in order of preference, which comes into play in crowded races where no candidate gets 50% of the votes. When that happens, the candidate who got the least is eliminated, and their votes are reallocated and retabulated until someone wins a majority. Now that's Maine. What about Nevada? Voters there selecting the two biggest names on the primary ticket to send Democratic and Republican heavyweights to the general election November 3rd. Governor Joe Lombardo appeared to win the Republican primary easily, as State Attorney General Aaron Ford saw some resistance from outside candidate Alexis Hill before winning the Democratic ticket. In South Carolina, Lieutenant Governor Pamela Yvette and State Attorney General Alan Wilson Tuesday advanced to the runoff in 2 weeks for the Republican ticket in the South Carolina governor's race. Yvette, endorsed by second-term Republican President Donald Trump, and Wilson, son of Republican 13-term U.S. Representative Joe Wilson, easily cleared three other candidates in that field. State Representative Jermaine Johnson won the Democrats' primary. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, bidding for a fifth term, charged past Greenville businessman Mark Lynch. He'll face Charleston pediatrician Dr. Annie Andrews, winning over Brandon Brown in that Democratic primary. With more about elections elsewhere throughout the country, let's now talk with Michael Whatley, the Republican candidate for U.S. Senate in North Carolina. Mr. Whatley, thanks for taking time with us here for the Center Square Daily. You've got quite the resume, leading state and national Republican organizations, including work with the White House. So how do you get more attention in your campaign, more so than what your opponent might be getting?
Well, there's a couple different things you need to do. First off, you got to get out and about. We've got 100 different counties here in North Carolina, and you've got a huge geographic spread from mountains to the Piedmont to the coast, and communities of every size, going from Charlotte and Raleigh all the way down to my hometown, Blowing Rock, North Carolina, 534 people, and everything in between. And you just really do need to spend the time to go to all 100 counties and have those conversations. But you also, you're going to need to raise the money, and you're going to need to go out and use traditional campaign, with TV ads and digital and direct mail and everything else to have the conversation directly with the voters.
Now, North Carolina has been growing. It's among the states with a growing population across the country. How important do you think it is to keep Republicans in control of both of those U.S. Senate seats?
Oh, it's absolutely essential. You think about it, we've got a 3-seat majority right now in the United States Senate. The president's agenda, the America First agenda, the common sense agenda that he's pushing forward to rebuild our economy, to restore our borders, keep our communities safe, and make sure that our military is the strongest, most respected in the world. That is going to depend on my seat. It's going to depend on making sure that we keep this seat in Republican hands. We also have to make sure that we're going to win the House. Right now in North Carolina, I feel very confident telling you, and I've been to 97 out of our 100 counties, the people want that agenda to move forward. They voted for President Trump 3 different times. They do not want to go back to Joe Biden's failed agenda of open borders, inflationary spending, and a woke, weak America. That's exactly what Roy Cooper is doubling down on. I'm going to fight every single day for policies that will let people make more and keep their communities safe.
So with the political makeup of North Carolina, and you and I touched on this just briefly beforehand about, you've got like a third who are Republican, a third who are conservative, and, the rest are nonpartisan, or they don't register within any of those 2 major parties. But they likely are going to have a significant impact on the outcome of November's election. How do you capture that middle ground voter to bring them over into your camp?
You got to talk
some
about
of those who may be more liberal sided.
Yeah, you got to talk about the issues they care about, right? And the people of North Carolina, they care about the economy, they care about their safety of their kids, and they care about the safety of our country as a whole. And that really defines the agenda that we're running on. Which is to make sure that people are going to make more and keep more. We're going to make sure that there are more jobs and higher paying jobs, make sure that we have lower taxes and lower costs, make sure that we're going to keep our kids and our communities safe by supporting our law enforcement, backing the blue, and keeping prisoners behind bars, as well as supporting our men and women in uniform. We have almost 100,000 men and women in uniform with the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, and the Coast Guard. Almost 10% of our nation's armed forces are based right here in North Carolina. We have 720,000 veterans, more than any other state in the country. So we've got to make sure that we're paying attention to those issues as well. And really, truly, when you think about our independents, right, our unaffiliated voters, which make up 40% of the electorate, they are going to want to know that you're fighting for them. And I'm going to be out there fighting for every family in every county across this state.
A lot of people know what's going on in Congress, and some of the big, tumultuous moments have been about whether or not to deal with the filibuster. If you were to get into the U.S. Senate, how would you approach that situation of needing that 60-vote threshold?
Look, what I would say is the Democrats have abused the filibuster. When you think about the fact that President Trump has not gotten a single one of his nominees through for any position with a unanimous vote, with unanimous consent, or even with a voice vote. The Democrats are not supporting any of those amendments. They're not supporting really any bills that are going forward. If they're going to abuse that system, we've got to put all options on the table in terms of making sure that we can move forward with the agenda that the American people elected the Republican House, the Republican Senate, and President Trump to get moving.
Your chief opponent's party, the Democrats, they're attached to the No Kings protest. Yet in 2 terms as governor, he issued a state record of 104 vetoes, 328 executive orders, and either voted or vetoed, not really more state budgets than he actually signed. So how is your leadership going to be different from what your opponent's shown in his leadership, and why should that matter to voters?
Well, I think it absolutely matters. The legislature in North Carolina has moved forward with a very aggressive posture to invest in our infrastructure, to invest in teachers, to invest in pay raises for our police officers, and tax cuts. And you're absolutely right that Roy Cooper vetoed 6 of those tax cuts, and 6 of those teacher pay raises, and 6 of those police pay raises. He has vetoed not just more than any other governor in the history of North Carolina, but every other governor in North Carolina combined. So, the fact is that you do need to be able to work across the aisle, which I'll be able to do when I get to the Senate, having worked in the Senate, and I know how that body works. Roy Cooper, on the other hand, is just going to march along with Chuck Schumer, Bernie Sanders, and the rest of the woke mob.
Now, if you were to get in the office, you'd be over in Washington, D.C. a considerable amount of time. But in the meantime, ahead of the November election, you're on the ground talking to voters. You were recently at a roundtable discussion in Wake County last week. What were the discussions like, and what was your takeaway from hearing people on the ground there?
Yeah, that roundtable was on no tax on tips. And what we were kind of talking about, what is the economic policy that the Republican Party is moving forward that I am supporting, right? And what we want to make sure is people make more and people keep more. And a huge part of that is making sure that we bring down costs and affordability, but also that we're going to cut taxes and we're going to make sure that people keep more. What we met with in that particular roundtable was a group of young voters who are surviving basically on tips and making sure that the Working Family Tax Cut Act which cut taxes on tips, eliminated them. Roy Cooper has said that he would have voted against that bill. He wants people to be taxed on their tips, on overtime, and on Social Security. The average North Carolina household paid $5,700 less in taxes on April 15th than they would have if that bill had not passed. And Roy Cooper said that he would have voted against it. I absolutely would have voted for it because I want every family to be able to keep more of their money because they're going to be better at making spending decisions regarding their own money than the government is.
You talked a little bit about public safety earlier, and your opponent says he cares about the public safety of North Carolinians, but it seems that this isn't an issue necessarily polling in some of the top tier issues. How do you address that issue and get people to recognize maybe some of the past instances of Cooper dealing with all kinds of inmates being released and others that were found to have, committed murder, for instance, or at least charged with it? It's a pretty big deal. But how do you get awareness on this and actually have that as a point of contention in this debate?
Yeah, the number one priority for any government, whether it's local government, state government, or federal government, is keeping its citizens safe, keeping the community safe. Roy Cooper allowed 3,500 plus prisoners out of prison, hardened criminals that he let out of prison, who then went on a rampage after they got out, right? So, when we talk about him keeping people safe, the fact is over 4,000 criminals that he let out, 700 plus of them had committed assault with a deadly weapon, aggravated assault, sexual assaults, rapes, and even murders. And once those people got back on the ground, they went right back to their ways. Probably the most famous guy on that list, DeCarlos Brown Jr., went on to murder Irena Zarotska after he had been rearrested and released 13 additional times. A very famous murder on the Charlotte Light Rail last year. That monster should not have been on the car, and Irena Zarotska should be alive today. And you kind of wish that that's where the story ended, but the fact is there's 25 others that were killed as a result of Roy Cooper's massive release. And he's never explained to the public why he let those people out. He's never explained why those were the prisoners that were on the list that he released, and he certainly never apologized to the victims or their families for releasing the criminals that went on to recommit those offenses. This is going to be an election in this campaign because the people of North Carolina want to know that they're going to be able to protect their kids. They're going to be able to raise their kids in a safe and secure environment, and with Roy Cooper, that was absolutely not the case.
Michael Whatley, the Republican candidate for U.S. Senate out of North Carolina, facing Democrat Roy Cooper and Libertarian Shannon Bray in the November election. We'll definitely be talking with you again soon.